Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today we have a trio of really fun guests on. So we have Holly Krug, who is the development chair for an organization called The Family Place, which is Texas's largest domestic violence prevention organization, along with Jess Bolander and Melissa Keeling, who are the co-chairs of the 12th annual ReuNight, which is one of the organization's flagship signature fundraising events of the year. And it's an event that I've been aware of for many years, and it truly is one of the most magnificent nights in Texas from a fundraising perspective. So I'm really honored and excited to have this trio of guests on to talk about the organization and really what it takes to put on a fantastic signature fundraising event from the very beginning of the night all the way through to the after party. So with that, Jess, Melissa, Holly, welcome. And I'm just thrilled to have you all on today as guests.
Thanks, Rob. Excited to be here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to address the first question to Melissa. So Melissa, would you talk a little bit about what the mission of the Family Place is?
Yes, it is. The Family Place empowers survivors of family violence by providing safe housing, counseling, and skills that create independence while building community engagement and advocating for social change to stop family violence.
Very well said and very succinct. And it's a really, well, it's a really important service as people do get back on their feet from rough and, very rough and very traumatic and very difficult situations. What you all provide is, and it's not just within the city confines of Dallas, it's the whole whole metroplex, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. And, I'm always fascinated, especially because I know all three of you serve on the board. So, and I always like to ask this question of guests that we have, because the one thing that I have learned over the years with top fundraising events is people get involved with organizations for different reasons. And I'm always interested in how people get involved. So, Jess, I would like for you to talk about how you initially got involved with this organization. And then, I'll ask that same question of Melissa and Holly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. For me, it started through some friends. I was invited to a few of their events. I've had some friends actually chair Trailblazers, our other event in the fall. And then it became this organic passion project for me because I'm such a proponent of women's rights, women in the workforce, and not to say we don't support men because that's equally as important. But if you're ever going to break cycles of abuse, emotional, as well as financial abuse, and that's through empowering women. And so that really spoke to me, and I got passionate about it. And then what was even more special is that my company, Blockton, then became a supporter of Family Place and then ReuNight last year.
That's fantastic. So can I ask a follow-up question with that? So, what advice would you give to somebody who works for an organization or a company to get their company also involved if you really feel passionate and really care about a particular cause?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, really, I mean, it's twofold. One, you can ask internally, do we have a marketing team or a cares division that promotes our company's mission to, further our brand in the community? And oftentimes, a lot of companies have this internally. Ours is called Locked In Cares, and it's a community involvement where we allocate money and resources to our direct communities. You can also take it a step further, which is what I like to do, and go talk to vendor partners of ours. So we are in insurance, and a lot of vendors, such as insurance companies like Aetna, Blue Cross, Cigna, they have a lot more money than we do, and they need to give some of that money away. And a lot of it is tax-free. They, can use it to hit their earnings. So it's a win-win for both. And I went to those vendor partners as well to find out how can they get involved and how can they donate.
That's fantastic. I like that it's almost like you were the seed and you were able to plant and basically branch out, like with a tree, like with tree limbs, and not only just tap your organization, but also some of the vendors and some of the partners that your organization works in on a day in and day out basis. And people often forget that, especially on the corporate side. A lot of the time, the reason that organizations work together is they have a similar culture or a similar set of values, and that's a really wonderful way to tap into that.
Absolutely. And one way to think about it is like these big companies, they have money to give. And if you're not asking, it's going somewhere else. So stay vigilant.
Always ask, because the worst thing that somebody can ever say is no. And so long as they don't ever say no and never contact me again, It means the door's always open to contact them in the future.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. All you can do is ask.
Mhm.
So, Holly, tell me a little bit about how you've been, because I know you've been involved with this organization for quite a while. So, talk about how you initially got involved with the family place.
I have. I think this is my fifth year on the board. So I am from Dallas, born and raised, and Partners Card is one of our most well-known fundraisers that we do for the family place. And I've known about Partners Card, I think, as long as it has been around. And I have been involved with Partners Card and then got involved with Trailblazers and joined the board, and kind of the rest is history. So, Dallas is a very strong philanthropic city, very strong in the community, and I wanted to dive in and figure out how else I can give back and help the family place, and kind of the rest is history. So here I am trying to find ways just to continue to help the family place grow and spread their mission out to others.
That's fantastic. And I will have a follow-up with you question a little bit later on about the various events that you do, especially with, your expertise as a development chair a little bit further in the conversation. And Melissa, talk a little bit about how you initially got involved with this organization.
Yeah, I actually got involved through my former employer. I did not know much about the family place and learned, read about it online, learned about it, and was really excited when they were looking for volunteers to be on the board. And so I interviewed. I had some personal connections. I think what really resonated with me was I've had a couple of friends that were victims of domestic violence, and these are not people that you would think, these were strong women that just completely shocked me finding out that they were in these situations. And so being a part of an organization that advocates for victims, and that, a big piece of what the family place does is also prevention, and even getting into the local high schools and talking about teen dating violence. So, I think it's so important that we're out educating the entire community.
Well, I'm really glad that you brought up the prevention piece because, a really good organization understands that you've got to serve people who have experienced trauma and have experienced abuse. But there's also the proactive part because ultimately, at the end of the day, any domestic violence prevention organization, ultimately, they want to see their cases go down substantially, not go up. So prevention is, in just about every organization outside of perhaps maybe the arts, prevention is such an important component. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I mean, I Jess and Holly, we're all mothers of boys. That's all we have are boys. And so, being sure to educate these young men about domestic violence and, why it's not okay to be violent with a girl. I mean, I think that's just so important, or violent with anyone for that matter.
Very, very, very well said. And that's interesting that's kind of what, it's interesting because all three of you got involved in different ways. Holly, you've known about, the organization forever through Partners Card. And Jess, you went to an event, and Melissa, you were kind of newer to the organization, but and that's always why I like asking these questions. The common theme is that you all have sons and you only have sons, and, you want to be able to pay that forward. And that's kind of where that prevention element is really key. And, one way to increase awareness and also increase funds is through, signature fundraising events. And for this, I want to address this question to Jess. And that is, what is one thing, and especially because I want to address this to you because you initially got involved through Texas Trailblazers, which is one of the other signature events. But what is one thing a person or an organization can do to create a devoted following for its annual gala or signature fundraising event?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to me, it's consistency. I've chaired other events, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of this one. When the bar's set really high, it's a tough act to follow. But if you can consistently deliver a star performance, star event year after year, your guests want to keep coming back. And I think a lot of that consistency involves making the mission front and center. And our mission is such a powerful one. And I think it's why people keep coming back every year, because we can all relate as mothers, parents, friends, coworkers. we want a safer world for our community. We don't want to see our neighbors hurting because of an abusive relationship. So I think that, pairing the consistency with your mission is how you get a successful event.
That's fantastic. And, with the consistency element, there's multiple ways that you can be consistent. I actually want to, this is the follow-up question I have for Holly, and I think this is a good place to address that question. So, there are multiple, since the beginning, we have talked about three different, signature fundraising events the organization has. So there's Texas Trailblazers Luncheon, there's Partners Card, and then, of course, there's ReuNight, which is what we're here to talk about today. So, Holly, from a development perspective, how do you go about, you've got the consistency of these events and awareness, but they may have different audiences. How do you ensure an active and highly engaged donor base, not just for maybe a particular event, but getting, folks, especially maybe on the corporate side or even the personal side, highly engaged year round in the various events that, the organization does?
Gosh, well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with they're all different audiences, right? Let's just peel the onion back and start with ReuNight. ReuNight is a very small, elegant dinner party. That's what we're calling it, right? The audience, it's 200 people. So it's a curated group, and we want to make sure we bring in new faces, but we also want to make sure that we take care of our faces that are regular donors. We want to make sure that we bring people in that continue to give back to the family place. And we say thank you to them. And so then you move down to the next event, which is Trailblazers. That is a bigger event. That is, 800 to 1,000 people. It's a luncheon. We're trying to spread the word of the mission, educate people, make sure people in the community know we are here to help. And back to what Melissa was talking about, abuse happens in every zip code. It is not defined by, a certain number of zip codes within the Dallas County area. It happens in every zip code. And I think that is what is the most eye-opening to so many people when they go and to any of these events, right? Or if they look on our website. So we just want to make sure the most people know we are here to help, and it doesn't matter where you're from, right? And we get that also exposure from Partners Card. That is our biggest fundraiser, and it touches the most people. We get the most corporation support from them, right? Because we are touching so many retailers. Our retailers, we increase year over year. More and more retailers want to be a part of that event because so many people participate in it. They get incredible exposure. So I think there's three different ways that you can, be a part of one of these signature events. It's just what works best for you. And we try to meet with every single person that shows interest and find what's the best spot for them, whether it's an individual donor or a corporate donor. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Well, and I love, that you kind of explained so well what the three events do. And it's almost like, especially if you're in development and you're, or any sales profession, there's often a sales funnel. And you really kind of, if you think about it, those three events are a sales funnel. So you've got, your Partners Card, which is probably the widest. You've got the Trailblazers Luncheon in the middle, and then you've got the, the ReuNight event at the bottom. And I loved how you just so thoughtfully explained, the targeting is going to be a little bit different to each just because the audiences are going to be more niche or, or more broad. And, in the case of ReuNight, it's a little bit more, curated, and it's kind of a, like you said, it's like, it's a really, let's just say elaborate dinner party, because 200 people is maybe a little large for a dinner party, but that is definitely, from a fundraising perspective, a smaller audience and a smaller event. And Melissa, I want to address the next question to you. So one thing that I have always enjoyed about ReuNight, and I went to one, several years back, is every year it's held at a different location. And I think that's a hard thing for an organization to do and do successfully. But the one thing that can do is it always keeps your guest guessing. So talk a little bit about how the different location each year helps create some excitement, maybe even a little bit of buzz among your donors and those folks that you do want to have come back year after year.
Yeah, and Holly, I may ask you to step in and help me out with this one, but I'm relatively new to ReuNight, but my understanding is that it keeps things fresh. And I could say this even as a patron, it keeps things fresh. There's a different theme each year. the location, like last year it was at the Swexen and it was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's just very, very well done. And then this year it is, I think I can say where it is, right, Holly? Have we?
Yeah, I think we can. We can announce it. Why not?
Oh, breaking news, people. All right, so where's it going to be?
I
It
don't,
is
I, we don't, yeah, we haven't, I don't think we've signed the contract yet. Let's wait.
All right,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
a
So hold
tease.
on.
It's a tease,
It's
people.
a
So
tease, but it is somewhere new and exciting because every year we try to have it at a new location. Like I said before, I mean, it is a small group of individuals that come, and there's not many dinners or evening functions where it's 200 people in Dallas. And so we can have fun with it. We can keep it exciting. You talked about the after party. That's the spot to be, but you don't even realize you're at the after party because it's very smooth. It just kind of happens. Music gets a little bit louder and things get a little bit more fun and interesting, right? And so that I think also entices people to come back because they want to know, oh, wow, how are they going to do it this year? You know, luncheons, when you're working with 800 to 1,000 people, there's only a couple of places in the city of Dallas where you can hold a luncheon. It's usually the Omni or the Anatole. And we all know how to get in and out of those places and what to expect. Crystal Charity, you know, they do it right, they do it well, and it's but it's an evening event, right? Ours is a luncheon, and we usually do it pretty well. But ReuNight's different, and that's what's fun.
that is what's fun. And I'm glad all three of you are here because I always like to say that a great event is like a three-legged stool and there's three legs. So there's the organization, like the executive director, development director, there's the board, and then there's the event chairs and the event committee. So I love, and we can start with Jess on this one, but what are the keys to having a good, successful relationship between the event chairs and the nonprofit organization and the board so that everyone's in sync? Because the really well-run events, you can tell that they're all in sync, and that's why they're really well run.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. And, obviously you've got to have respect, clear communication, shared goals, and also outline responsibilities. There can't be too many cooks in the kitchen. And I feel so lucky for this event because I've known Melissa. I think we're kind of the same person. We're just very, head down, type A, working moms. So this just feels so natural and easy. And then obviously having Holly's leadership to guide us because she's been with the organization longer than we have been. Her board expertise has been so helpful. And then also the Family Place team has just been so instrumental. So shout out to Jen Munoz and Amy Dessler because they are really keeping us on track and making our lives pretty easy. So it's been a great team.
That's amazing. Melissa, do you have anything to add?
No, I would say the same thing. Right? The Holly and then the development folks at the Family Place have just been great with timelines, and they send a text out pretty much every day, kind of where we're at, and we've got scheduled meetings each week, and so just having that consistent guidance is key. I have never chaired an event of this size. I've chaired other events, and so this as someone relatively new, it's great.
That's great. That's great to hear, and that you have similar yet different experiences and backgrounds. And Holly, I'd love for you for the follow-up to this. And a lot of organizations, they'll look at the organization and the event chairs, and sometimes they'll bypass the board. What advice would you give to an event chair in terms of making sure that you're effectively utilizing the board to help get the word out for their signature fundraiser?
So, I mean, we're in a unique space, right? Because all of us are on the board, right? So, and we will lean on our board for support, whether it's, financial support or, rolling up your sleeves and helping us at the actual event. So, I think I'm super excited for this year because of our unique space for kind of what our chairs being on the board and being able to utilize that. So I was going to say something and I've totally blanked. I'm sorry.
No.
I'll come back to it in a second. But
so there was an undercurrent of what you said, and Lisa Cooley was like the second or third guest we had on this program, and she said it takes a village. And we're kind of describing here all those various components of the village. And one of those components of the village is an event committee. And Melissa, I'd love your take on this just because you are a little bit newer to the organization. But how does having a strong host committee help you execute your vision of what you're looking for this event to be?
Yeah, I mean, I plan to rely on the host committee heavily to get people engaged, to get sponsorships engaged, to get people to attend the event. I mean, that's key. I have my contacts, my network. Jess has her network. Holly has her network. But all of us working together in conjunction with a host committee, and we can touch hundreds, if not thousands, of people if we really put our heads down. And another kudos to Holly. She's chaired so many events, and we are so fortunate to have her right by our side, kind of guiding us through this process, just because she has such great experience in this area.
Absolutely. And between the three of you, you're the terrific trio. And, with that, the terrific trio, along with the rest of the committee, every year your event always has just these really incredible themes. They're always incredibly fun. They're engaging. They're unique, which makes it, I think that's one of the things that just really helps keep people, excited. So I'd love, and Jess, we can start with you on this one, but talk about how the selection process of how you all came up with this year's theme, and any advice you give to when you've got a committee and you've got a board and you've got chairs, what advice you would give to getting kind of everyone aligned on the same page to be excited about an event theme?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you have a marketing team or people that do this, like we leaned on Jen and Amy, rely on them because they're the experts. And I loved their vision was about the beauty of renewal and growth. And that really aligns with the work that we do at the family place. And they wanted something elegant and artistic. I got so excited because I think that flowers represent growth and perseverance, and resilience as well. One of my favorite quotes has been, it's by a famous Chinese philosopher, and it's the flower which blooms in adversity is the rarest of all. So I butchered that, but you get the message that.
I love it. I'm so excited about the theme. Tell them the theme, Jess.
Yeah, so the theme is the couture in bloom. So how do we blend flowers and fashion? And we'll have some fun surprises at our event. But I just think it's such a beautiful metaphor for growth and resilience and overcoming adversity.
The funny thing is that I can imagine what that room will be like. I know it will be a stunning, beautiful room because no one does fashion like folks in Dallas do. And when you add the element of floral and life within that, I know that room will be over the top, beautiful and amazing and wonderful. And I feel any of you feel free to chime in with this one. And that is, this is a smaller event. So how, talk a little bit about how you bring those elements in to allow the guests, to kind of have that wow moment when they take it in, but also to really also at the same time highlight the organization and what you all are about when throughout the evening, because the visual is important but also the mission's important. So I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts on on how you effectively blend those two.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. I think that this is what's so beautiful about ReuNight is it's always been a small, intimate gathering. It's meant to be a thank you to our donors. The ticket prices started a little bit higher of a price point, which is okay because you're getting a more intimate experience and a fabulous dinner. We don't have the traditional fundraising silent auction because it's just meant to be a more elevated experience. And I think that allows us to focus on our mission, remind folks why they're here in a more intimate, elegant environment.
Very well said. Does anyone else have anything else to add there?
I mean, I would just add that the theme, the way that they blended both the mission with a theme for the actual event, and you can tie it into decor, and women can play off that with their dresses. I think it is so well done, and I'm excited to see it come to life. And we're going to leave, a lot of the surprises up to the event and development team because I know they're already planning things that we don't even know about, but the stationery alone is has purple undertones, which obviously purple is our color. And so I think like Jess said, we can do that because it is a smaller event. And as Melissa touched on, I shared with a dear friend of mine, Trailblazers, a couple of years ago, and it's a larger event, and you want to do those things, but take the little details on the linens and the place cards and the flowers when you're doing a larger event. Cost is you have to, mind your cost, and we can do things a little bit more elevated on a smaller scale. So I'm excited to have fun with this.
It's interesting because it's almost like you're saying less is more sometimes.
Mhm.
Because you have
Yeah.
fewer guests, you can do a little bit more with your budget because, and I think Melissa and Jess both mentioned it's a little bit of a higher price point. So, because you have a higher price point and you've got fewer people, that's kind of where that less is more. You can give more detail. It's just the less is fewer people, but you can provide more detail to give that elevated experience without breaking the budget because you're doing it for a third to a quarter of the people.
Yeah, still being very good stewards of the money, absolutely, but there's less people. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, Holly, I want to ask a follow-up question here. And, just touched upon this earlier about, how she got her company involved and then got, some of her vendors involved. As a development chair, talk about the differences about how the organization will approach an individual donor versus a corporate donor.
So, with individuals, like I said earlier, it's a very personal engagement with them because you want to understand why are they wanting to learn more about the family place? Do they have a personal history? Is there something that's pulling on their heartstrings? So you really want to get to know what they want and how can we help as much as how can they help us? So really kind of diving into those details and helping continue nurture and grow that relationship. And then as far as corporations, I mean, I really think it's just Melissa, I think, touched on this, is aligning with their values and helping them get the most brand exposure for their company, right? So really looking at it from a branding lens versus an individual is not necessarily looking for that. So
Absolutely. That's great insight. And that, approaching it from a personal level, because a lot of people they'll personally give because they feel a personal tie to the organization. Like Melissa, you had mentioned that you have had friends who have, suffered from, domestic violence. And that's one of the reasons that compelled you to become a part of this organization. So there was like that personal, that personal element here. Do you have do you have anything to add just in terms of, because you're kind of newer chairing, how you have found the outreach process to be, being a first-time chair of, of an event for this organization?
Well, we haven't done a lot of outreach yet just because we're still finalizing the location. But yes, I mean, just from the initial, first week and a half of us working on this, the support that we have from the development team at the family place, the special events team, Holly, I know we're well supported, and I'll be reaching out to my network as soon as we start, or as soon as we release the name of the location.
That's fantastic. And tapping into your personal networks, and even if it's a smaller event, all three of you had said at various points today that, you want familiar faces, but you also need new ones so that it's not, so that there's that unpredictability. It's always fun to walk into a room and be like, I never would have expected that person to be here, but here they are, and how cool, how cool that they're here. And, I want to talk a little bit about, we've talked about, kind of the event at a high level. One thing that I know that ReuNight has always been pretty well known for is the great after party that you all host. So Jess, I'd love to hear, what is the secret to keeping donors interested and engaged so they stay all night? Because a lot of times when an event ends, after party means for some people hightail it out of there. So I'd love your thoughts on how you keep that going all night long, because I see it every year with the post-event photos. There are plenty of people there all the way to the end.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is going back to the intimate dinner, why it's so important just to keep it about the mission, intimate dinner. Let your guests enjoy their conversation and networking amongst the table. And then you got to end the party early so you can shift to the after party. It's like, I feel like sometimes when you go to these events and there's a long, drawn out live auction, silent auction, people just start getting up and you lose the spouses, typically the husbands, and everybody just starts dropping like flies. So I'm so thankful that ours will be more intimate and there won't be that pressure of an auction. And then we can just, seamlessly transition into a fun after party and just celebrate the mission.
And celebrate all night long. That's fantastic. And Melissa, are there any, what are some other things that guests can expect to experience at this year's ReuNight that you might be able to share?
It's a surprise.
It always is. I always have to ask that question. I will say 4 out of 5 times people say it's a surprise, and you're going to have to go to find out.
Yep. We'll look forward to seeing you there, Rob.
Would love to be a part of it because I know it will be an absolutely fantastic night. So I know we're coming up on time here. I'm going to ask each of you this, and we can start with Holly, then Melissa, and Jess. You can have the last word. And we'll start with Holly. Like I said, what advice would you give to someone looking to chair their first nonprofit event?
Oh gosh. Well, speaking to my 2 chairs, I think the most important thing is to have fun, right? And obviously remember the mission. We've talked a lot about that, but have fun because it is a lot of work, and we are working really hard to make sure that our chairs don't feel overwhelmed. I think one thing that I am making sure that I do for them as a prior chair of other events, right? I know what needs to be done, and I know what works, or have a good idea of what works and what doesn't work. And I am protective of them, right? I want to make sure we're all 3 working moms, right? And we also sit on the board. And I want to make sure that when we meet weekly, we have our agenda and we have everything that we need to accomplish. And then we move on, we do our to-dos, and we're back at it for the next week. So it's accomplishing our list of tasks while focusing on the mission, raising money, right? Spreading the awareness, but also having fun at the same time. I'm excited their husbands are a part of it this year. This will be super fun for them. So, because I think it's great to have your spouse by your side, and it helps them learn more about it. And then they spread to their network. It's just, spreads the awareness even to a greater network. So as far as advice, it's just, have fun and do your best.
Have fun. And I really like that insight about making sure that you're getting your spouse involved, because I've often found that a lot of times with nonprofits, one half of the couple may have a little bit more of a connection to it than the other half, but the other half will be fully on board with it once they, once they've had the opportunity to experience it. So I'm really glad you brought that piece up. And Melissa, I'd love to get your take on advice that you would give to someone looking to chair their first nonprofit event.
Yeah, I think being connected to the mission is really important. I have been asked to chair other events and declined simply because either I didn't feel strongly about the mission, or didn't feel strongly about the team that would be supporting the chairs. And so in this case, there's an excellent team supporting us. We have Holly's background and her support and strong connection to the mission. And so it's something that, a new chair should be very excited to do. Like, when Jess called me about potentially chairing this event, the first thing I thought of was, okay, I could call this person and I could call this person. And, it just a lot of excitement and buzz around, okay, this is something where I can make a difference for the family place.
I'm glad you brought the excitement part of it, because you can feel, if an event chair is, I don't want to say phoning it in, but you can tell when they really want to be there and they're passionate, and that energy of wanting to be there is contagious. And if you embody that, and if your first thing is, gosh, I can call these 7 people, and like you're not even off the phone, you're like, okay, I know that I can do this and I can do it really well. So I'm really glad you brought that piece, that piece up. And then Jess, I'd love to hear your take on, what advice you would give to someone looking to chair their first gala.
Holly and Melissa had great advice. I think the only thing I would add to that is, know your strengths and weaknesses and rely on each other, because I'm a terrible marketer, design. I just can't think of a pretty prop or floral arrangements, but what I can do is fundraise and cold call. And so that will be my lane, and I'll rely on others who are more artistically inclined to think of the fabulous details, and vice versa. I've chaired events with people who were prior cattle baron chairs, and they can plan and execute the beauty of an event like none other. And you need all sorts of expertise. And so I would just say surround yourself with a great team and then stay in your lane.
Well, here's the thing, because a lot of times when people, and Jess, that was an excellent answer. And the thing is that a lot of times with nonprofit, there is so much passion that people have for it that a lot of times in the nonprofit space, more in the corporate space, people think they have to do it all themselves. And that is an excellent reminder that the event will not be successful if you try to do everything yourself. That's why all three of you are here. All three of you have important components. And as Melissa was talking about, you have the event committee. They're going to do their part, and all of you are going to come together and do certain things. And that, thank you all three of you for being here today, because what you've all really described is how you can effectively do this year round with different types of fundraising events, how you bring passion and excitement, and how it's okay to do a smaller event and okay to be mindful of budget, but also give an elevated experience if you plan right and you understand and target your donors. So Melissa, Holly, Jess, thank you so much for joining us today. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great.
And ReuNight, benefiting the family place, will be held on May 15th, 2025 in Dallas, Texas. For more information, please visit familyplace.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.